Laura, Queen of Earth 2, This Author's Redemption, a quasi-canonical Podquisition fanfic, by Alexander Gordon Jahans, orated by the Nat Sock. Dedicated to the hosts of the Podquisition, Laura, Queen of Mirth and Butts, Jim fucking Sterling Sun, Gavin Miracle of Sound Dune, and those of the transgender community that betrayed me when my back was turned. Heathrow Airport had not been rebuilt after it was destroyed by the thousands of centiliters of sylph shit that rained from the sky on September 11th, 2016. Instead, it is now a huge allotment where basic crops can be grown in the shit that the sylphs produce. The order not to rebuild was given by Laura, the lover of butts and the transgender Queen of Earth. She said one night, while chewing on a bit of steak, "Yes, shit is fertilizer after all, isn't it?" The problem of what to do with all the sylph shit that had blighted England years before was solved. A renewable, sustainable allotment for genetically modified crops could go some way in perpetuating the idea of a post-scarcity society. But one night, while Laura was on the toilet in a gender-neutral bathroom of her massive castle, considering the mass automated manufacture of sylph pills to roll out to the populace, a knock came at the door. Violated and ashamed, Laura covered her genitalia and answered, "Stop this now. I'm trying to relieve myself after a stressful day of looking at butts and editing Let's Plays." But the voice that came from the other side was warm and familiar. "No," it said. "I came here to warn you that every universe has a Farschnook. What with all the Logicios and Sylph running around, the Farschnook of this universe is bound to be active and you have to be ready." Laura opened the door of the cubicle and saw that it was Jim fucking Sterling's son staring back at her. "How?" asked Laura. "The Farschnook is a weapon," said Jim. "If you keep him well fed and satisfy his addiction to taming women, he can be aimed to do your bidding and provide a valuable asset, but you must always be able to kill him, and whatever you do, do not let him talk you into becoming his pet sylph. Laura, you are a strong woman, but that only attracts the Farschnook more. He will worm his way into your skin and tame you. You have to prevent that." Laura nodded. "But how do I repel the Farschnook?" Jim paused. A harrowing look fell across his face. "In order to stop the Farschnook, you must first hide from him. The first rule of the sylphs is that there are no male sylphs, only female sylphs. The Farschnook can therefore only turn you into his pet sylph if you are female." Laura realized what Jim was saying. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "Laura, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But it's the only way." Laura took a few moments to consider what Jim fucking Sterling's son was intimating. She pulled her flowery skirt up and flushed the toilet behind her, walking to the sink and washing her hands. Jim remained silent and sullen. Laura asked, "If I take the sylph pill and return to being the gender that was assigned to me at birth, will I definitely be able to stop the Farschnook?" "We cannot be certain, but the scientific consensus says that it is the only way," said Jim. Laura sighed. "Okay. Using my own free agency as a strong, independent woman, I consent to sacrifice my own gender identity in order to once more become male. This is the only way that I have a chance to stop the Farschnook." Meanwhile, in America, the fucking Nazi fascist Donald Trump is sitting in the Oval Office with his finger hovering dangerously close to the nuclear button. Sitting across from him is a smartly dressed man in a suit and tie. He is stroking a shrunken woman in his hand, the Farschnook, and his latest pet sylph. "President Trump, it was my influence and brown shirts that got you elected. It's about time you did something for me." "Like what?" said Trump. "I want Laura, Queen of Earth and Butts." "But she is my sworn opponent. She is the strong, independent woman to my misogynist and transphobic self, the yin to mine yang," said Trump. "Exactly," said the Farschnook. "Only someone as morally repugnant as you can bring Laura to me. Like a magnet, opposites defeating opposites." Trump nodded. "I'm starting to see what you mean." The Farschnook stood and looked out the window, gazing at Capitol Hill and the sky above it. Laura, I didn't know that I was starving until I tasted you." Meanwhile, back at Laura's castle, the momentous occasion was about to take place. Laura stood fully naked. Jim fucking Sterling's son had donned his ceremonial robes and held in his hands a box. This box contained the vial of potion that would revert Laura back into a male. Jim admired Laura's naked body. The surgery that had been crowd-funded by the fan base had produced a very convincing result. A shame, thought Jim, that this was all for naught, as Laura was about to change back into a Farschnook. "Okay, here goes," said Laura, as she opened the box in Jim's hands and held the potion. "Wait," said Jim. "Before you transition back, I just wanted to say, you do things to my body." Laura was shocked. "What?" "You know just how to make my heart beat faster. When I see you go through an emotional earthquake, I don't need no butterflies when you give me the whole damn zoo," said Jim. Laura smiled. "Jim, let's do this later, yeah? Right now I need to save the Earth from the Farschnook. I can't do these distractions. But maybe, when this is all over—" "Nando's?" said Jim. "Nando's," said Laura. She downed the potion and collapsed to the floor. She was changing. 6 weeks passed. Trump's brown shirts and jackboots invaded Laura's castle, but she was nowhere to be found. Jim Sterling was the only occupant in the castle, and he was tortured and flayed for days by Trump for information. Jim never said a word. Scout's honor. Trump was getting more and more agitated with each passing day. He made a deal with the Farschnook that he would be able to deliver Laura within a week, but it had been 6 weeks now. Trump thought to himself that he'd been doing just fine before he met the Farschnook. He drank too much, and that's an issue, but he was okay. All he really wanted to do was pull Melania closer to the back seat of their rover. Suddenly, one of the jackboots came rushing in. He was out of breath. "What is it, man?" Trump said, shaking him. "Sir, it's the Farschnook. He's here." The orange color drained from Trump's face. Laura was now living under the assumed name of Allen, as the name had always appealed to her. She was now working as a lifeguard at a public swimming pool in Scotland, the socialist paradise. She said to all those that swam in the swimming pool, "If you feel you're sinking, I shall jump right over into the cold, cold water with you." This assured the swimmers. Laura continued, "I want you to know that I won't let go." Anyway, Laura had now been Allen, the lifeguard, for 6 weeks, but she had not forgotten her mission. She had to become Allen to stop the Farschnook, and she had been making lots of plans. Oh, these plans were glorious. She planned to use the sylph shit from the sylph shit farm at Heathrow Airport against the Farschnook. All she would need was a cannon. And so it happened that she was using the proceeds of her lifeguard job in order to fund the purchase of an 18th century antique cannon from eBay. But Laura was also wrought with worry. Jim fucking Sterling's son had been left alone in the castle, and there were murmurs from the people at the swimming pool that he had been flayed for information as to her whereabouts. "I'll avenge you," said Laura aloud, "if it's the last thing I do." The Farschnook made Trump kneel when he entered the room. He was pissed. Where was Laura? He must have her, and make her his pet sylph. Trump was groveling. "I'm so sorry, sir, but it appears she's completely vanished from the face of the earth." "How can the Queen of Earth simply vanish?" the Farschnook retorted. An awkward pause. "Unless—" A moment of realization flashed across the Farschnook's face. "Trump, where have you got Jim Sterling stashed away?" "Torture Chamber 9, sir." "Good. Fetch him to me." 15 minutes later, the naked, bloodied, beaten, bruised, and flayed body of Jim Sterling was thrown onto the floor, at the feet of the Farschnook. Jim looked like Christ taken from the cross. His foppish finger had diminished considerably during the 6 weeks of torture. Jim raised his head. "I will tell you nothing." "Oh, but you will," said the Farschnook. "You shall tell me everything." "Never," said Jim weakly. "Trump, go and fetch me my personal vat of albino squirrel cum." A look of horror fell upon Jim's face.
"Wait! No! Please, no!"
But his protestations were too late. The albino squirrel-cum was already here. Laura was on eBay. The auction for the antique cannon that she wished to purchase was ending in 15 minutes, and she wanted to stay ahead of the game. This was the plan. She was going to buy the cannon, have it delivered to Heathrow Airport, and then she would get the train down from Glasgow to London. Once there, she would fire the sylph shit at her own castle, destroying Trump and the evil Farschnook. She had already sacrificed her gender identity, so she was more than willing to sacrifice her castle. Her thoughts turned once more to Jim Sterling. Before she reverted back to a man, Jim had confessed his undying love for her. "Oh, Jim," Laura sighed. "Why do you always leave things until the last minute?" Oh shit! Laura had been distracted so much by the thought of fornication with Jim Sterling that she hadn't noticed that the eBay auction was in its last minute. Alas, Laura was the sole bidder, and the auction was in fact a buy it now. The antique cannon was hers. The Farschnook had overloaded Jim Sterling with so much albino squirrel-cum that the floors of the castle had been flooded. It had taken many centiliters, but the Farschnook finally got the truth. Laura was now in hiding, living as a lifeguard called Alan. Jim Sterling was returned to Torture Chamber 9, and the Farschnook made plans with Donald Trump to raid the swimming pool where Laura worked. Laura would have to move faster than she had first thought. The train from Scotland to Heathrow Airport was a pleasant one. Laura listened to audiobooks, watched many a true nerd Let's Plays, and drank Rochester dark ginger during the journey. She almost forgot why she was traveling. She had to stop the Farschnook by firing the sylph shit stored at Heathrow Airport at him. But as she sat there on the train, mulling over the events that were about to occur, she paid notice to the background radio. "Attention, all citizens! President Trump and the Farschnook are making their way to a swimming pool in Scotland, where the Queen of Earth has been living as a lifeguard called Alan." Oh no. Oh double no. This was bad. This was really bad. Trump and the Farschnook were going to kill so many people in Scotland to find Laura, while she'd be at Heathrow Airport preparing her cannon. Ah, well, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Laura knew that all the lives that had been taken in her name would be avenged when she fired the cannon of shit at the Farschnook. Trump and the Farschnook had arrived in the socialist utopia of Scotland. They were repelled by the leftist ideologies and longed to be back in England, where their jackboots could march uncontested. "Ha ha ha ha! Now Laura shall be mine," said the Farschnook. But President Trump was unusually quiet. "What is it, Donald?" asked the Farschnook in a caring way.
"Nothing. It's just—"
"Go on," said the Farschnook.
"It's just, I have a gut feeling that Laura isn't in Scotland at all, and she's instead at Heathrow Airport and is planning to use the sylph shit contained there against us," said Trump.
"My God, man, you're right. We need to catch the earliest train to London as soon as possible." Trump and the Farschnook headed to Glasgow train station with a frantic pace. Laura was at Heathrow Airport. She admired the size of her cannon. The pictures on eBay hadn't done it justice. It was definitely the right size to load the sylph shit into. She knew she had to work fast. It was only a matter of time before the Farschnook arrived. The Farschnook and Trump's rain journey from Scotland to London was refreshingly pleasant. They exchanged mild conversation of the viability of a post-scarcity society and watched a Let's Play of Skyrim Remastered. They agreed it was indeed an inferior version of the game, as mods could not yet be used upon it. "How long until we arrive?" the Farschnook finally asked.
10 minutes,
said Trump. "Enough to finish many a true nerd's Let's Play of Skyrim Remastered," said the Farschnook happily. Laura aimed the cannon at the train station. She knew that she would have to time it just right, or everything would be lost. She was going to fire the sylph shit at the train when it arrived, but she didn't want to kill all of the innocent passengers, only Trump and the Farschnook. She had a moral dilemma on her hands, like the Doctor in Genesis of the Daleks: kill everyone so that more may live, or spare them and risk the Farschnook turning her into his pet sylph. As she saw the train alive, she thought, fuck it. She fired the cannon. Everyone was covered in shit and died. To be continued in Laura, Queen of Earth 3.